Greetings, students. Today we will be discussing about the primary sex organs of female reproductive system, and that is ovary. So if we take an ovary and slice it up like that, that is if we take a TS section of that particular ovary, so this is how it will be appearing. Okay, so in here, what we can see is first of all an lining of cells out here on the outermost border of the ovary. This lining of cells, just like it was in testis, is the lining of the germinal epithelium. Okay, now we have already studied the gametogenesis process. That is, we know how an ovum will be formed from the primordial follicle cells or the germinal epithelial cells. So these germinal epithelial cells are embedded over here, and they are going to then further on get converted into something called as the primordial follicle. Now, primordial follicle has two things in its structure. One is at the center over here, it is going to have the primary oocyte, and then surrounding to it, you are going to have one single layer of some cuboidal epithelial cells. Okay, we will be calling these cells as the granulosa cells. Okay, so this primary oocyte that they have, primary oocyte will be diploid in characteristic. Diploid means it has two set of chromosomes, one from the father and one from the mother. Okay, so so far the meiotic division has not started yet. So after the primary follicle, the primordial follicle, primary follicle will be formed, and from here, from the primary follicle, the division of the primary oocyte will take place, and your diploid cell will be converted into a haploid secondary follicle. Okay, and then the secondary follicle develops into a tertiary follicle where it has a lot of these granulosa cells accumulated over there. Now these granulosa cells are said to be the discus proligerus, or we can also call them as cumulus ophurus. Okay, discus proligerus or cumulus ophurus, or simply we can call them as germ hill as well. Okay, now what the cortex means the outer part of the ovary, whereas the middle region of the ovary, where you can see these arteries and veins, that is the blood vessels, the middle region of the ovary will be called as the medulla. Okay, so your ovary, just like your kidney, is divided into outer cortex and inner medulla. Okay, outer cortex, inner medulla. So this is the cortical region or the cortex region, all of this, where you can see all the components of the follicles being formed. And the region over here at the center where you have the blood vessels, that region will be called as the medulla. And medulla, in the medulla, you're going to form a fluid-like structure, which will be having lot many enzymes and other stuff. So that particular region will be also called as the stroma. Okay, so the fluid will be called as a stroma, which you have in the ovary. So far we had come over here that the primordial follicle was formed, and primordial follicle or the primary follicle is now also going to start dividing meiotically, and then you have the secondary follicle which is formed. Now from the stroma, some structures get enveloped around the germ hill or the discus proligerus or the cumulus ophurus, and this slimy structure which is getting surrounded around it is called as theca. Now, theca means covering in normal English. Okay, theca is a Latin word for the word covering. So there will be two layers of theca, and the outermost layer will be called as the external theca, and the inner layer will be called as the internal theca. You can see that over here in the mature follicle. Mature follicle is also called as the Graafian follicle. So in the Graafian follicle, we'll be able to see this, the external theca and the internal theca. So since theca is written in Latin over there, so external and internal will also be written in Latin. So we will be calling them as Tika Externa and Tika Interna. Okay, so Tika Externa and Tika Interna are the two layers that you have around the mature follicle. And in the inside the follicle over here. Now you have the primary oocyte being primary oocyte, which is now going to become a secondary oocyte. So it has gotten converted into secondary oocyte. That is, the meiotic division is complete out here. And then you have the layers of granulosa cells around it, or the germ hill, or the discus proligerus, or we can also call it as the cumulus ophurus. Okay, so all these structures will be present, and this will be how your graphene follicle will look like. Now, what happens is these germinal epithelium get converted into primordial follicle when the female is in the fetal stage. मतलब वो जब अपने मदर के यूट्रस में डेवलप हो रही है, तभी ही उसके ओवरी में these germinal epithelial cells are going to get converted into primordial follicle. Okay, and at that time, when the female is in the fetal stage, that is inside the mother's womb, that time the ovary of the female, unborn female baby, will have 2 million of primordial follicle. Okay, by the time the female is given birth to, by that time only 1 million of the primordial follicle will remain, and the remaining 1 million will get destroyed. And this kind of destruction is called as atresia. Okay, so atresia will take place of the primordial follicle, and at the time of birth only 1 million will be left out in the ovary of the female. And by the time that particular infant female who has just been born right now, by the time she reaches the puberty at the age of 12 or 13, only 40,000 of these primordial follicle will be remaining. Okay, that means 9,60,000 of those have undergone atresia. Okay, or destruction. Atresia का मतलब क्या होता है? Destruction. Okay, so जब female fetal stage में है, तभी से primordial follicle बना है. Okay, so that means when your this thing basically that means you or the when you were formed, the ovum that your mother gave was produced in her ovary, not the ovum exactly, but the primordial follicle of that particular ovum was produced in her ovary when she was in your nanny's womb or the uterus. Okay, when she was developing in her fetal stage. So that is the connection that you have with your grandmother, that while your grandmother was carrying your mother in her uterus, the primordial follicle by which you were formed were also present in there. Okay, so that is how things go on. And by the time, okay, now 40,000 पे आ गया था अपना number puberty के time पे. Now what happens is these females follow something called as a menstrual cycle. Now we have discussed about a bit about menstrual cycle before, and we have studied about it in 10th standard as well. So we know this much कि menstrual cycle is for 28 days. Okay, 28 days का ये menstrual cycle चलता है. And उसमें what happens is on the day 1, the primordial follicle will start developing into the mature follicle. So by day 12, secondary follicle is formed, and by day 14, the mature follicle or the graphene follicle is formed. Okay. On the day 14 itself, a process called as ovulation takes place, where the graphene follicle is going to burst out and the ovum is going to come out. Okay. Now we remember this कि जब हम लोगों ने gametogenesis पढ़ा था of the ovum, so उसमें हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था ये जो सेकेंडरी फॉलिकल होता है या फिर सेकेंडरी oocyte होता है, it gets arrested in metaphase of meiosis 1. Okay, so यहाँ पे it is going to get arrested. तो यहाँ पे secondary oocyte है. You do not have the ovum, you have the oocyte, and the one which comes out over here is also actually the oocyte only. Only after it fuses with the sperm, उसके बाद उनका वो meiosis complete होता है, and then it becomes an ovum. Okay, so here also actually it is secondary oocyte only which is coming out, not the not the ovum entirely, because ovum abhi tak form nahi hua hai. The meiosis is arrested. Okay, so along with the ovum, some germ cells or that granulosa cells are also coming out, and ये granulosa cell जो बाहर आ रहा है, this will be now forming something called as corona radiata. And corona radiata क्या significance है वो हम लोग को बाद में पता चलेगा. Okay, now इधर अपना oocyte है, यहाँ पे granulosa cells या फिर germ cells है, and in between you have an empty area which is filled with some kind of fluid. This empty area will be called as the antrum. Okay, now anywhere in your body, if you have a hollow space, we will be calling it as antrum. Your stomach also has an antrum, that is a hollow space. Okay, so this is also an hollow space which will be called as an antrum. Okay, so this is the antrum. and the ovum has come out. Now, once the ovum has come out, then the remaining parts of these graphene follicle will develop into something called as corpus luteum, which is going to secrete the luteinizing hormone. ये luteinizing hormone क्या करता है, that we will come to know when we study the menstrual cycle. And once if the ovum which has come out over here, or the secondary oocyte which has come out over here, is not fertilized, then this corpus luteum gets converted into corpus albicans. Okay, and for corpus albicans will be thrown out of the system and it will be sent into the endometrium. And what other changes take place, that we will be learning in the menstrual cycle. So this is about the TS of ovary. Now, when we speak about the dimensions of the ovary, the ovary ka size kitna hai and what structure it has. So this is what we know about the dimensions of the ovary. Okay, so your ovary is 3 centimeter in length, 1.5 centimeter in breadth, and 1 centimeter in thickness. Okay, 3 centimeter in length, 1.5 centimeter in breadth, and 1 centimeter in thickness. Okay, and we already know where it is present, and it is attached by the ovarian ligament to the uterus. Also, it is attached to your body wall by the mesovarium. Okay, so that is all for today. We will be discussing about how these menstrual cycle changes take place, or what exactly happens in tomorrow's lecture. So see you all tomorrow. Until then, goodbye. Do like the video and also subscribe to Right Academy's official channel, and also look at the previous video if you have not revised yet. Okay, so goodbye students, and see you all tomorrow.